Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you a review of the new Zhiyun-Tech Crane 2S. Now, actually, the very first motorized gimbal that I reviewed was the original Crane some years ago. And I have watched kind of generation by generation with not only the Crane, but with competitors, that every generation, they just keep really advancing the technology so far and so well. And I've seen a lot of those kind of core improvements in a few things that I want to highlight as a part of this review. So first of all, let's address who the Crane 2S is for. This is, obviously there is a Crane 3 now that is designed for even higher payloads, but frankly, I'm not sure how many people are going to need a greater payload capacity than what you've got eligible here on the 2S. And so the first thing that I want to highlight, because I think this is incredibly important, is that these motors are really, really powerful. So just to give you an idea how powerful they are, one of the cameras that they show as having support for is something like a 1DX. And so a big 1 series camera, heavy, and of course lenses are going to mount on it are going to be heavy. And as with anything, obviously the heavier the combination you start to go with on your particular camera combination, the heavier it's going to be to actually use it. And so that gets me to an accessory I'll cover in just a second that I find incredibly important. Now, I get if you're someone who does gimbal work all the time, you probably build up the right kind of muscle memory and muscle itself to use these over long periods of time. But kind of the two-edged sword of being able to carry a heavier payload is that you can put a heavier payload on there. For example, here I've got a Canon R6, and I have got the 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 lens. So, I mean, that's not a lightweight combination right there. Somewhere, I think, going to be somewhere in the vicinity of, let's say, around 1.5, 1.6 kilos. And so it used to be that kind of payload was going to be something that you would have problems with. At this stage, this is nothing compared to what you can put on there. So interestingly, at this point, they don't even actually give you in the tech specs, they don't give you a kind of a payload limit. That's not to say that there isn't an obvious practical limitation, but I watched a video where Dan Watson, for example, for a while, he threw on a 1DX Mark III along with the 70 to 200 f2.8L IS lens on there and worked with that for a bit. And so obviously your capability of payload is huge at this point. The other thing that having more powerful motors really, really helps with is it just means that when you get into those tight areas, I've just seen over time where, where you're kind of in maybe an awkward position and you feel those motors start to hum or maybe start to introduce a little bit of vibration. I almost never encounter that with the 2S, with the the payloads that I have put on there. It's just the motors are so strong, it's able to deal with those little inconsistencies. Or if you're someone who, you don't always get everything perfect in your calibration and your balancing of everything, it really helps to cover your mistakes in a way like I've just not seen before. So I've been very impressed, and I think that that's kind of the huge priority here. The other thing that I think is really cool is that they're getting more and more locked into the ability to put, in this case, we've got USB-C primarily ports all over the place to allow you to either run accessories, or in this case, it's the first time that I've been able to successfully, for example, with this or my R5 mounted, to be able to actually change aperture right from the control here to actually start and stop recording with any consistency. And so to actually have direct control over camera function from this is huge, because you're not kind of, trying to hold this with one hand and make changes on the camera with the other, which I've had to do a lot of in times past with gimbals. And so very, very impressed with that. Now they have worked to increase rigidity down in the portion that you hold. It is now carbon fiber. It looks very, very cool. The only downside to the carbon fiber, it is a smooth finish. And so I've actually preferred some of the more kind of rubberized handles I've used before that have a little bit better grip. For that matter, even this add-on grip, that gives you a grip for the second hand, it actually has more of a rubberized surface, and I would say I prefer that, though this is a nice, system for how it works. The other thing that stands out about the build is that, obviously something that started to get included in these was locking mechanisms that can really help you during your calibration process. It's actually smart enough now that if you try to power it up and it's got one of the locks in place, it will beep at you. It will tell you that something is locked instead of you finding that out in the middle of a shot, and getting ruined by it. And so, but these locking mechanisms, they feel really, really great. The build quality on this is really fantastic. I mean, that's been my experience along the way, but you can just tell, like, just getting a little bit better with every generation. I mean, right down to the kind of the helicopter tripod, foot system you could put down here. Everything is just getting, the materials are better quality, better tactile finish on them. It's just all really, really good stuff. Now, of course, all of these tend to be really integrated these days with apps, and of course that is the case here. You can run a lot of things off the app. You can program in different kinds of shots. You can change modes. You can do all of those things. Obviously, all of that is good and welcome, and there's a lot of ways to where you can just kind of program in everything from a time lapse to, tracking a certain, range of motion, prearranging shots. And so that is useful if that's something that you do, depending on what your actual footage you're trying to capture. But obviously, for me, the big thing is just the ability to grab it and to have it work as I want, to be able to switch on shots, going down low, coming up high, being able to quickly switch out modes as you go. There is now a nice little locking mechanism right there that will just kind of lock you to keep you exactly in place regardless of what you're doing. So in the middle of, if you're doing a different kind of shot, you can hit that thing and all of a sudden now you're locking, and so you're doing a different kind of shot. And so I find all of that to be really useful, and above all, the fact that it obviously just works. Now, as far as accessories go, there's a lot of things that you can utilize here. And so obviously what has become a thing is, a separate motor to go to either control zooming or focusing. If you're using a manual focus lens in particular and you want direct drive control over that, you have got a lot of accessories that you can just plug in. So again, with all of these USB-C ports everywhere, it's easy to plug in accessories like that, and so you can direct drive. That will, typically you're going to utilize the focus wheel here on the side, and so it's an easy way to control back and forth on that motor. And there's some use for that. I've used it a little bit. I don't find that to be kind of my main sense of control. Very likely, if I'm going to be doing kind of a fine focus pull, I'm more likely to be shooting from a tripod than I am from a gimbal. Typically, I'm using a gimbal if I want moving footage. And so, your mileage may vary, obviously, but, that's a nice accessory. They actually also have, again, that kind of is a credit to the powerful motors. They also have what they call a dual cam extension module. What that basically means is it's allowing you to position a second camera in place. And so you're getting, maybe two different angles of shot in the same, kind of tracking sequence. And so, again, I don't know if that's something you want to do, but you've got accessories to do so. Now, this accessory right here, what they call the sling grip handle, this is great for me. To me, this actually is more useful than a dual handle setup because it allows you to kind of use the logic of all of the typical control there. But, with a heavier payload, to then be able to support that with a second hand, and you'll find that there is a lot of versatility on where you put that grip, how you position it, depending on how you're going to shoot. But everything just tightens down, and I've had no problems with slippage and things like that. And so for me personally, I find that is a huge help for carrying that the payload to where I'm not getting worn out, and I typically feel it right in between my shoulder blades is where I typically feel it when I'm doing gimbal type work. Now you can do a lot of the different shots, including, Mota calls it inception mode, where you spin around. I mean, you can do those type of shots. In this case, it's obviously going to be dependent on what size your camera and lens combination is. One thing that I do like for gimbal work with the you know, a lot of the newer cameras that have an articulating screen is the ability to put that screen out to the side, and so it doesn't get blocked by the rear handle. That is a bit of a limitation here. Now, you can actually move things around. There is a piece that you can remove here to drop that assembly down a little bit more. You get a little bit less length in terms of your combination, but it can, if you're working with a camera that has a fixed rear screen, it can help you to get the rear motor kind of out of the field of vision. These days, I mean, you know, you can either, you know, the Canon options, the newest Fuji options, and then even like, you know, the Sony A7C or the A7S Mark III, all of those now give you an articulating screen, which is great for gimbal work. I mean, to be able to put that at an angle where it's really going to be useful is huge, obviously. Now, another aspect that is really positive here that I'll just demonstrate really quickly, but you do have the option to mount also in a vertical shooting, orientation. So you can lock that in that way, and then obviously you can then program and set it up for vertical shooting. So obviously you're going to have to play with that balance a bit to get it into the position you want, but now you have the capability of then shooting in a vertical if that's the kind of footage that you're looking for. And so their quick release system does allow you to fairly quickly move back and forth between those two things, though obviously it's not going to be lightning fast because you do need to, obviously you have a different balance requirement depending upon which system that you're shooting in. But at the end of the day, I think that the Crane 2S does strike a nice balance for those that are looking for a lot of power and versatility in a motorized gimbal, but don't need, you know, one of the very, very expensive top-end models that has more, you know, more weight capabilities than what you really need. I haven't really thrown anything at this here that I've not been able to, you know, get it to balance and work well with. And so for me, this is pretty much a perfect gimbal. It's not maybe as compact as far as storing it as what some that I've seen, but neither is it huge and onerously heavy to carry around. The gimbal itself weighs in at a little over 4 pounds, 1.88 kilograms. The batteries that it comes with are easily rechargeable. They are the 18650s. You can also get a second set for a small amount of money and keep a charge backup, but you get about 12 hours of runtime out of them. And frankly, I mean, for most people, that's going to be enough for an all-day shoot if they're shooting wedding footage or whatever. And so probably plenty for most people under most circumstances. So at the end of the day, at a price point of $599 US, I do think that the Crane 2S really strikes a nice balance. There's a lot that you can do with this, and the footage I've gotten out of it, I've been really pleased with. I just find that it does all the gimbal stuff that I'm accustomed to doing, but does it just a little bit better and just a little bit smoother than what I've seen, with less of the irritants. And if you've used gimbals like myself and that you're not using them every day, they're a little frustrating sometimes because while they're amazingly powerful and they can do a lot of stuff, there is a lot of kind of moving parts and things to remember. And this, I just really find, helps to cover up for the mistakes of someone who doesn't use a gimbal every day like myself. And so if you're that kind of person, I think the Crane 2S is a great choice for you. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you can look in the description down below, you can find buying links there where you can go and shop for, purchase one for yourself. Beyond that, there's linkage to follow me on social media, to become a patron, to sign up for my newsletter, and if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.